Thank you very much. I'm glad to be here with you. Can you hear me okay?
I'm lost. I'm actually trying to find Diane Jeffs
Oh, wonderful. So we just noted that Diane's daughter went into labor this morning at 2 in the morning, and she's now like at an 8, and so she's rushing to West Valley City to be there for the delivery. She said, I think it's going to be okay. Last time she was in labor for 3 days, but just know you're on notice, Mr. Anderson. So I'm here to pinch hit on the subject of high school, which actually is a subject I know well and care very much about, very dearly about. She and I work very closely in the high school program here at American Heritage School and in Latter-day Learning. So today, let me just get a sense for your high schoolers. How many of you have high schoolers right now? Looks like almost all of you. How many of you are here because you're going to have a high schooler in the next 2 to 3 years? Right? Another half of you. Great. And I want to hear from you. What is the what are you most what are you hoping for your children to what are you most nervous about? What are you scared about with high school? Does anyone have anything they're scared about? Yes. The math component, right? That's a very common concern. I don't remember calculus. How am I going to help my child with pre-algebra, maybe even? But at least the algebras and the advanced trigonometries. Okay, one more.
All my older ones that have been to high school, they say they go to class and then the last 40 minutes you're just sitting there looking at your phone. You're not doing work.
Right. Inefficient use of time, perhaps, in high school, right? Is it well worth my time to send them to a public school or a charter school or even a private school, right? Okay, yes?
Well, I homeschool, and my daughter's like, well, if I'm going to go to college, maybe I should go to high school because I don't know what to expect from school. So I'm looking for something that will prep them for college, but not necessarily high school, but will still get them into college.
Great, wonderful. The big question, do I even need to, how much high school do I need? Do I need it or how much? Okay, a couple more.
I think ours is the same thing as college is a little bit like high school. There's lots of different things like that. But also the social aspect, we thought about just homeschooling until they get through junior high and then get them in high school and things are seem a little bit better so they can have a little bit of social aspects for our kids want that.
Right. Yeah, the social pulls and tugs of friends in the ward, in the neighborhood, or others that they know. Here, and then Mrs. Bogus, and then right here. Go ahead.
For me, I had a son last year that went through the program, through the high school. And then I've got one that will be starting this next year, totally different. And it's getting him to be committed to the assignments, also writing. Being able to put lots here, but getting it from here to here is a huge thing.
That's right. So many homeschoolers have rich table discussions at dinner time, at lunchtime, and yet maybe we haven't held as much writing assignment accountability, and so that's something that raises our blood pressure, right?
It does.
Are they going to be ready? Makes us nervous. Okay, 2 more. Mrs. Bogus?
Yeah, I'm looking for a combination or a fit for a child with some learning disabilities.
Right, learning disabilities.
And doesn't fit the mold and
Okay, great. Thank you.
Thinking the mom over here that's worried about college, I do have two that I homeschool and have been accepted at BYU IOM scholarship. So that happens for me, but my concern is more the mentorship and with an adult's mentor as well as the social aspects, because they need that. There's a change in what they need after they hit about 12 that you can't do by yourself.
That's right. We sometimes call that the gradual release of responsibility model, right? And Marilee spoke about this, that by high school you want them to be able to do certain things. And that happens gradually, right? Maybe we keep them at home during the elementary or even the middle school years, but by high school we've got to begin releasing more and more to the children. Okay, Mrs. Sterling?
I'm totally brand new to all of this, and I'm just wondering, it said options for high schoolers. How do they get accredited? What are my options, really, as far as I'm brand new to all of it?
Great. Very brand new. So let me go ahead and give a few points that I hope will answer some of these questions. And then I'll introduce you to Latter-day Learning's high school program briefly. And then we'll just take it from there with some Q&A, okay? So first of all, just very briefly, there's a history here of American Heritage School, which Mr. Beckwith mentioned. We've been around for about 50 years. And almost 50 years. Here in just 3 more years, it'll be 50 years that American Heritage School has been teaching children. But the vision of the founders was not to be a school for all students, that there would be many homeschoolers outside of the state, outside of the nation even, who would need to benefit, including at the elementary level and perhaps beyond to the high school level, from curriculum that we produced. Many homeschoolers found that they had connections in Utah, they had heard through the grapevine about American Heritage School, and so they asked questions. They called and they said, can we get you to come build a school in our neighborhood? Which of course is very difficult, right? To build brick and mortar, it requires really strong leadership, the right strategies, and access to capital, which we can't export very well. We can't export the brick and mortar, right? It costs so much money. We can export the right strategies, right? But the leadership has to be local. And then the access to capital is another, it's specific to the area. But what we did find was most of these parents were talking about high school. And so we began a program in 2008 in 2009 actually, where we began to pilot some high school courses. And we've learned a lot along the way. And one of the things that we've learned is that homeschoolers who do high school have a lot of great options out there. So number one, know that there are a lot of options. And number two, that most of you are on the right road to being very proactive for your children and getting them the experiences that they need, right? Some of these experiences that you need are a certain number of credits, right? You don't actually have to have a high school diploma. Some of you asked about this. 15 credits is what BYU says they need to consider a GPA an authentic GPA. We learned that in some of our research. They said, we have homeschoolers apply all day, right? Every day almost. We have homeschoolers who call us and say, how many transcripts credits do I need? And we don't take transcripts seriously if it's just 1 or 2 credits, because we don't know if that student had the easiest teacher on the block or the hardest teacher on the block. And a transcript becomes useful to us when we see 2 things. One, we need enough credits that we can tell that it's a good, healthy average. We think 15 takes out the bumps and bruises for the difficult teachers or the easy teachers. About 15 credits would take most students 2 years to complete, about 7 to 8 credits per year. And that's typical. You think about the high school that maybe you attended or those in your neighborhood. Most of them offer 7 or 8 classes a day. They're typically 1-credit classes or half credits, and they change at the semester break. But it's about 7 to 8 credits per year that a high school student will earn typically. And so we like to see 2 years worth of diligence. We want to know how they've done over 2 years. Was this a flash in the pan that they got straight A's and they did it all in one term? Or have they been diligent across time? And we like to see the variety in those 15 credits. So, if they're taking all 15 credits of, just art, that's wonderful. They're probably an excellent artist. But that tells us something, right? If they are taking a variety of classes or where they're focused, and there's not a right answer there, but we like to see the variety. So, yes, question?
About that 15 credits, do they take that from 9th grade on? You can accumulate.
Good question. Yes. So part of the point of 15 credits is that it typically starts when you're a 9th grade student. Now, some of you might say, can I start sooner than 9th grade? BYU Independent Study and American Heritage School and some other programs say that if you want your child to start high school before age 14, which is the typical age you would be entering into 9th grade, you're a 14-year-old student turning 15, that you would need to have a parental request, but then also show some evidence that you are, that your child is ready to do high school work. So BYU Independent Study and American Heritage Schools say, here's a test. If your child performs on a 9th grade level according to this test, then we will let them in. But they must be at least 12 years old, and then they can start high school credit. Okay, so not necessarily 9th grade. They could be 12 or 13. But they've got to probably pass a test for most schools to say, we're going to skip the grade and let you start it in 9th grade. Yes?
15 credits, are they looking for them to be accredited, or do they have to be with a school, or can they be 15 credits that they're closely monitored by a parent?
Good question. So, BYU says, the BYU system says that 15 credits should come from an accredited institution or institutions. Although there are homeschoolers that apply without any credits or without a full 15 credits. And what we do in those cases is we say we're going to weight the ACT or SAT more heavily. And so they've told us we typically look for 2 points higher if they don't have a GPA. Right? If they don't have an accredited GPA of 15 credits or more, then we'll say, we'd like to see 2 points higher approximately on the ACT. Of course, there are other factors. They do look at the essays. If a child has excellent essays that are just really persuasive and wide-ranging, then that might make up for it. It's a holistic approach. It's not just plug the numbers in and, let's see who's admitted. Although it might feel that way sometimes. They do try to make it personal and thoughtful for every child who applies, every student. Yes?
For information, this year to get into fall at BYU, the average GPA or ACT score was 29.
That's right. The average ACT is closer and closer to 29 at BYU. It's creeped up. It was 28, 28.1, 28.3. So the average means that, of course, mathematically, average means that approximately, it's not the same thing as median, but it's approximately half or higher and half or lower than a 28. That means there are students, and I've seen many students who get in with 25, 26, 27, even 24 occasionally. But if they were not to see a GPA, and they would say, hey, this is our lowest threshold this year is, say, 24. Right? We're probably not going to admit very many students lower than 24. And this seems like a really, really great student from their essays. And, they don't have a GPA. We would admit them, but now we're going to look for a 26. Did they get a 26? Oh, they did? Great. 26 composite on the ACT, we'll let them in. So don't think you have to get a 28. That is an average, or 29, right? But do know that you've either got to have the combined GPA and ACT or a pretty solid ACT, right? That's really close to that average. Okay, how does that sound? Does that answer some of your questions? Okay, now as for options, right? There are lots and lots of great online options. At least there are a whole variety of options, right? Utah's electronic high school. Most states in the union now have some kind of electronic public high school that you can register for through taxpayer money, right? And that means it's free to you as if you were going to a public school. Of course, it's paid by taxes. There are many online charter schools as well that are also funded. Charter does not mean private, and it's not tuition funded. It is publicly funded, but it's slightly different because they got special permission from the state, a charter from the state to start a school, but they aren't publicly funded schools. Those options, of course, are secular options. They will not incorporate religious teachings, typically. Sometimes some of them may try, but generally speaking, they're secular. And even BYU Independent Study, which is a private option, as is American Heritage School, there's a tuition funding mechanism for those. And some will be secular, some will be religious, some will be really freedom-oriented, primary source-oriented. So you'll just do your research. But there are a number of great options that are relatively affordable. It does take some thought and planning to say we're going to try to accumulate 15 credits, which I think I personally recommend that you try to go for 15 credits. Some people ask, well, do I need to graduate from high school? I don't know about you, but BYU, when I went to BYU, never asked to see my diploma, right? They admitted me halfway through my senior year. They still do this, and so do most universities and colleges. They admit you, about halfway through your senior year. And with few exceptions, some of the Ivy League schools want to have you turn in your fourth term grades and your diploma to see that you were a finisher. But there are students who are admitted, and a diploma is never ever asked for. So you don't need to graduate. You don't need to walk. There is some social value to that, possibly, to some of your children. Those requirements in Utah, 24 is the base requirement number of credits for graduation in Utah. Some high schools have higher requirements. For example, at American Heritage School, it's 29 credits to graduate. Question?
I was just going to make a comment that what we're kind of trying to do with our son is take some college classes and get,
Oh, great.
starting to work towards an associate's degree for him. So basically, I'm trying to just dual credit, basically.
Yeah, that's right. So that's another good option. Some high schools and some concurrent enrollment programs will give you credit both on a university campus as well as on your campus. UVU is well renowned in Utah for having a concurrent enrollment program. Utah State has a concurrent enrollment program. BYU has some concurrent enrollment, which allows you to earn college credit at the same time you're earning high school credit. It reminds me, that's right. So some people will just start English high school early. This happened to some students that we've had here at American Heritage School. One student after 10th grade said, I want to go to BYU. She had 15 credits on her transcript. She applied as a 15-year-old. She scored a 28 on the ACT. She applied. She was admitted for her summer term. So right afterwards, she went to BYU. She lived at home. She started her college career. Before she was 19 or 20, she had her history degree at BYU and finished a bachelor's degree. That does mean, of course, leaving the nest early, perhaps, right? Maybe, maybe not. Maybe they're staying at home if you live close to the college of your choice. Or maybe you're sending your young child to RMville or who knows, right? When they're young. And so there are lots of different thoughts to just be sure you carefully consider where do you want your child to live. It does help to have a child live away from home before they serve an LDS mission. That is something that is highly recommended by the church, and not just scout camp or girls camp, right? More than 1 week. A semester away is a great opportunity to overcome homesickness, to learn to really apply some of the skills that Marilee talked about. Okay, so consider that. Vicki?
And those 15-year-olds have to live with relatives, at least in the past year.
Right, relatives can be fine. On-campus housing, off-campus housing, there'll be lots of opinions there, but somehow getting out of the house with mom and dad is a good step, right, before an LDS mission. Okay, question. Foreign exchange?
Foreign exchange is
Oh, foreign exchange, that they can actually live a semester abroad. Yeah, that's right. There are some, that's right, great. So that's a J1 exchange visitor program. If you want, there are lots of websites that can help you if you want to send your child to study in Europe or, and we have a few families at the school we could connect you with who have done that.
I just have a question about the BYU Online.
Sure.
Do you have to take the whole course, or do you have to do only their classes, like enroll completely in their high school, or can you
good question.
pick and choose the classes you want?
Yeah, good question. So most schools will accumulate credits, which means that BYU will say, we do have a transcript program. You can sign up for our transcript program and try to build toward what would be a complete high school diploma equivalency. They don't give a diploma. They don't say you've graduated, but it's a transcript program. Many of those schools, our school included, any public high school, will accept credit from other accredited institutions. So this happens all the time when students move from one school to the other, right? They take their credits from one school. Please send a transcript to my new school. The new school accepts those credits, puts them on the transcript. They may label them as, put a label of which institution they were earned from. But, even here at the American Heritage School, for example, sometimes we have students apply for their senior year here. We'll take their credit. Online schools do this as well. They'll mix and match. So you can be really flexible. If you've got a program that has a great class and you really want your child to take that class, we'll hire them. I want to hire this BYU or Williamsburg or Utah Electronic High School to teach my child this class. And be eclectic, and then choose where you're going to accumulate those credits. That's what you need to decide. Am I accumulating them from the local public high school, where I am sending my child to take chemistry because I don't want them blowing up the garage, or band because you can't do band alone, right? Or am I going to do it through some online school? And talk a lot with those schools up front to just make sure they're willing to accumulate the credit, to receive credit from multiple institutions. Okay? Yes?
I was talking with my cousin last night. She just got married, and her husband just transferred to BYU into the University Information Systems Master's degree. And I forget if he was at BYU, Idaho. But anyway, he had to redo all of his general classes for a year to have a match with BYU. Their what do you call the beginning classes?
Yeah.
BYU doesn't seem to accept other credit.
Yeah, so that's a caution. If you want your child to go to BYU, concurrent enrollment typically doesn't actually transfer that well. BYU is pretty stickler about some of their general education requirements. Not in every case, and if you transfer half a degree, like an associate's degree, they'll sometimes accept more of it than if you just want to transfer a few credits, because it's kind of got a seal of approval already.
Yeah, the associate's
comments.
degree transfers fairly well.
That's right.
If you don't get your degree, it transfers.
Less. Yep, sometimes much less. Yes.
So I've had two kids that have done the concurrent enrollment junior year in the summertime for BYU. That's a nice way if you want them to go to BYU. Having to attend between their junior and senior year shows intent and interest. They know this person really does want to go to BYU.
Yes.
Because they might, they're not applying to 20 and they really wanted to go to 20. But, and then also I found we like doing BYU college classes just for also, and for independent study.
Right.
Like nutrition or whatever, just to kind of,
Sure.
to show again intent.
Yeah, we had
The
a
level is not that.
we had a student take a history class here from us online. It's written by just an absolutely wonderful man whose name is Nick Gentile, who was the valedictorian of the history class at BYU when he graduated, went on a full ride scholarship to Brandeis University, which is a baby Ivy just outside of Cambridge, Massachusetts, and studied with David Hackett Fisher. He came home, he came here, he applied to teach here, and we accepted. We were so happy to have him come. Very well-loved teacher. Well, his first class he wrote with 600 pages of primary source ratings and all of these things, and the students just about died. But they loved it, and one of the students quit about halfway through, and she said, Mr. Anderson, I realized if I can survive Mr. Gentile's class, I'm probably ready for university courses. So I'm going to just start taking classes. I really like your school, but I'm going to start signing up for BYU's online university courses because I feel like I can do that, right? So that's certainly an option. What's so wonderful here is that you are, with your spouse, are kind of like presidents, right, over your family. And you have all these options as you're developing your, I know this is kind of I don't know that you'll like a business analogy for a family, right? Children are not widgets. But as you're producing your children, right, and as you're trying to help them become wonderful adults, you have so many options that you can hire, right, that you can use. And you don't need to feel constrained to the one-size-fits-all, I got to send my child the 4 year to the local public school, because you really can. You can take summer courses online from high schools to do credit advancement or credit recovery if you need to. You can do university courses online, right, ahead of time, and that shows them I'm eager, I want to start university even though I'm still in high school. There are just 100,000 options, and so many times parents think, they don't think outside the box. They think, oh, I've just got to go through 4 years of high school, and others get more creative. We're going to do 2 years or 3 years, and 3 years and we're going to get a diploma, or we're not, or we're going to do early college admission, or we're not. We're going to do 4 years and then go, right? So it's really, really craftable to your own family.
Can you bring that to like BYU and some of the private schools that do the concurrent enrollment? I know that the public schools in Utah funded at $5 a credit. How does that work with BYU and LDCC and Utah?
That funded $5 a credit through some of the public schools?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's in connection with UVU or USU, some of their concurrent enrollment programs. I'm not an expert in some of those programs, but I do know that there are counselors at those schools. If you're interested, go, set an appointment, sit down, ask them all your questions. And, you know, this is great material for family counsel and, you know, personal interviews with your children. Yes?
So, I love this curriculum, but
Mhm.
in the math for high school, we've been using Math CC for my 12
Yes.
younger, but I don't know what high school math really recommends, or,
Great.
and also writing. Do you have a writing?
Great question. So I'll show you now for the next, let's say 10 or 15 minutes, what American Heritage School has produced for high school. And we publish it through Latter-day Learning, which is the worldwide outreach program of American Heritage School. It's just the brand. But it is written and produced by American Heritage School and by our author team that lives, you know, outside of the school in some cases. So if you go to latterdaylearning.org and you click on our programs, you'll see that we have 3 main programs. Our flagship program really is the Family School. It's our first program that serves homeschoolers in grades K through 8 or K through 6. Some use it all the way through 8. Do any of you use it here? A few of you? So it's written to be a one-room schoolhouse approach where you teach all of your children at the same time, one lesson. It's well prepared, well scripted with resources at your fingertips, printable online or purchasable for low cost from us. And instead of having 3 different history curriculums and 3 different science curriculums and 3 different art curriculums from some other provider where sometimes they send you boxes for each child, you just have one lesson, and then there are activities at the end of the lesson that are for each level. Well, the high school is a little bit like that. We've chosen to follow, so here you can see, here's the high school. We have 2 options for high school. One is what we call the accredited program, and the other is the non-accredited program. So non-accredited is just simply these same high school lessons written at a higher level, and you can teach them and study them in co-ops. The co-ops, groups of families, of course, that homeschool together, or perhaps hire a local teacher to teach a group 1 or 2 or 3 days a week, typically, and don't seek credit. If they're seeking credit, rather than just personal enrichment, then they do it in partnership with American Heritage School. They can earn up to 29 credits, and they're available for students in grades 7 through 12, where we provide grading and feedback. And they can submit and receive feedback from our teachers, and they do that on a timeline, right? They do it within terms. So, for example, if you have a subscription to the Family School, there are, of course, different levels. You can either get a membership just for K-8, or you can get a membership for 7-12. We overlap those 2 just because we find that some parents like to hold on to their children a little bit longer. Some like to kind of push them out of the nest a little bit earlier. So that's why their 7 and 8 have an overlap there, right? So it depends on the child, right? So under 7 through 12, and I guess what I'll do is I'll show you the scope and sequence here first. As you're planning, here's our scope and sequence for the Family School. If you can see it, it's just 6 years worth of curriculum. And we've split it up, we've split it up into 6 subjects: history, literature, science, geography, art, and music, and then 6 years. Of course, this doesn't mean grades. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Again, it's a one-room schoolhouse approach, but we call them year 1, year 2, year 3. Starts with ancient history, works toward modern history. Asia, you know, we do a continent each year, or a couple of continents 1 year. Art kind of follows history from ancient art to more modern art. Well, with 6 years, that could easily take a child through the equivalent of 6th grade. And then if you wanted to do another 6 years, but at a deeper level, and go through the same curriculum twice, then that would be what you have for a high school curriculum. So you can study this, you know, this ancient Rome, and in the Family School lesson, it's a great foundation, really wonderful lessons. If you want to go a little deeper on a high school level and actually read primary sources or translations of, you know, some of these ancient Cicero or, you know, Plato, when you're studying some of the ancient philosophers, and actually read some of their words or translations of their words. We don't do that typically in the K-8. But we get to more primary sources, more writing assignments, right, in the high school, but it follows the same scope and sequence. So we've actually made this such that you could teach your children, say year 3, you're teaching your children, and then your child in the afternoon could attend a high school class. Or maybe they attend the high school class and you then have them teach the lesson the next day, because now they've learned all about the Reformation and colonization, right? And they become a co-teacher with you. Then they submit assignments, right? And those assignments come to a teacher on campus who reads them, gives thoughtful feedback, gives them a score. They can resubmit if they need to, right? We want it to be iterative and not just submit and get a grade, or submit and get a grade and no feedback whatsoever, right? Many parents find it helpful to have those deadlines and a third party to hold them accountable, right? Because mom is so nice and she just loves me so much. And besides, in the real world, there really are deadlines, and people do require and hope that you'll get things done, right, on a schedule. Yes? Good question. Good question. So, that's right. So they don't come here on campus, but we'll show you the schedule. Let's see. So here's a sample schedule. This is available, of course, with your membership. In fact, this is all public without even a membership. So this is the calendar this year. Today is March 12th. There is actually, on March 11th, just yesterday, art lesson number 13 was taught. This is the schedule that we suggest for your family school. Of course, we don't manage you, and you don't want us to manage you. You just want to teach when you want to teach. But we've suggested the schedule for the high school, though. We teach on this exact schedule. So students from all over the world, including Peru and other places, log in, and they have a discussion at 2 p.m. Mountain Time. Right? If they can't attend, they can watch the recording. It's posted later that day using a GoToWebinar meeting service or GoToMeeting. They turn in their assignment that day as well. They can turn it in late as well, because we allow for local flexibility. Sometimes this is a state holiday in your state, but it's not in, it's not in Utah, and so there's flexibility for when you turn it in. But the deadlines and due dates are recommended there, and it's posted in the calendar. And they'll sign in to this next year. They'll sign into what's called Veracross. This year they're using something called Canvas, which is very good. But Veracross is our online learning management system, and they can download their assignments and then submit them there as well and receive feedback from the teacher and a transcript and a report card, and it'll all be right there. In fact, I can show you. I'll just show you what that looks like.
So do you have to take the whole year if you do it that way, or can you just take a couple of the classes?
Yeah, good question. So one of the great desires of homeschoolers is to have flexibility, right? And so that's what we feel. We exist to serve parents, not to tell you how to educate your children, but to serve you and to provide tools and resources for you. So in our program, we say, for the subscription amount, just like most universities, you can have any classes that you can take, right? You don't have to take 18 credits. You could take 15 credits. You don't have to take 16. You can take 14, right? And so at our rate, which is $120 next year per month, you can take as many classes as you want. Now, that's on campus. If you were coming here on campus, you'd be paying more like $600 per month.
This is the high school.
For high school here on campus.
The 120 a month.
Right, 120 per month gives you access to as many courses as your child can take. And some take 3 and some take 6, and we have some that take 9 and just really speed through, and they can do a year and a half or 2 years in one single year because they're really focused.
Does that cover those extra classes that I noticed
Good
that you
question.
added some extra classes this year, and I'm like, can I take those?
Yeah, they're pretty interesting classes, aren't they? Let me show you the report card real quick, then I'll show you an overview of the classes, then I'll come to your question. So, if I log in here and I had a child, you wouldn't see my teacher portal, but you see the parent portal. These are my children. And there's Benjamin and Emily and Linda, Mary, Peter. So if I click on, we'll say Emily, she's in 8th grade, so that would be the closest to this grade that you're talking about. She'd have these different courses. I can view assignments, and let's go to Introduction to Spanish, for example. I can see when those assignments were due. Let's see, I'm going to actually log in as one of my students for a minute. One more here.
Is this new this year?
Yes.
Okay.
Is that 120 per student, or is that per family? Like if you have several children, like 7 to 12?
It is per student. Yeah, but again, it's as many classes. It's so all in all, it'll be about $1,400, $1,500 for your whole year. But you take as many classes as you want. So many schools will sell you a class for $150 per half credit, or $300 for the year, or $300 per half credit. And you add it up and you take the classes, you end up having to pay a little bit more out of pocket when they sell it to you a la carte like that as a menu, and you have to dish out the money up front. Ours is on a monthly membership to keep the cost lower, and overall it's less typically, especially once you break the 4 or 5 credit margin, or 6 credits. Once you're taking that much, it's less than most people are offering right now.
So they are accredited? These guys?
Absolutely, all of these are accredited.
So if they were 12 years old, they would have to take the test.
That's right. We give them a test that says, can you score at a 9th grade level? If the test says you're at a 9th grade level and your parents say that you really want them to be in this class, we'll let you. But you have to score 9th grade. Okay? All right, so anyway, here's one. For example, family science. This is a class that I teach. And this student turned in their assignments. They can just submit them online here, drag and drop, or select from their computer, and they submit it online. But we have really rich discussions online. Right? Reasoning discussions. We do what we call the 4R methodology: research, reason, relate, and record. Research is the gathering and examination of information. Record is the writing, but in between it's so important to reason and relate. What are the true principles, the lessons, the cause and effect, right, that makes this happen, the whys behind the whats. And the relate, which is, who's a good example of this for me, like John, by the way, said, or when have I seen this, right? Or what can I do to apply this to my own life? And that is so important. That's what homeschoolers are really good at, right? Reasoning and relating, lots of great discussion, language dancing at home, right? Back and forth, turn taking, back and forth, yes.
Well, some of the concerns I have is the fact of my kids being at the computer all day long.
Right.
I mean, even though they're having discussions, typing it in and whatnot, I just wonder about, is that going to be affecting their learning, where they're
Yeah.
only at the computer all day long?
So we try not to have it just be written assignments, though there are lots of written assignments. There are lots of family enrichment opportunities as well as activities that we suggest. And our online school is not, you think about high school, it's like 5 hours a day, right? Or 6 or 7 hours a day, 5 days a week. If ours ends up being, you have a history class once a week, right? So every Monday is history. Every Tuesday is literature. Every Wednesday is science. Every Thursday, geography. And then art and music rotate. 3 of art, 3 of music, 3 of art, 3 of music, history and appreciation. And so it's 1 hour a day. If you take other electives, like a math class, which we do offer pre-algebra, algebra 1, algebra 2, and next year also advanced math, which is trigonometry, and then we'll offer calculus the year after that, then it might be 2 or 3 hours per day. But that's one of the big concerns, right? Gratefully, it's not just child on the computer surfing. It's in a webinar that's interactive, we hope is engaging. We hire the best teachers we can. They make it exciting and, again, meaningful. So it's not the same thing as surfing the web. And, in fact, our service is like a webinar service. You can put it on your phone or any other device, and you can stick it and do dishes or clean rooms while you're listening or watching, right? And so it can be, anytime, any place, and almost any pace, because you can watch it another day if you want to go on a field trip as a family and say, we'll watch that tonight or tomorrow.
So
Yes?
are all the classes webinars? So you have your little instruction when you do your assignment?
Good question. So right now, just like the family school, we've been releasing it 1 year at a time because we've been writing it for a beta group, a pilot foundation family group, and then polishing it and publishing it. The same thing with the high school. Right now we have recordings for back years, and the current year we do live, and we broadcast live and we record those. Our real feeling is that face-to-face instruction is where it's at, right? There's nothing to replace the spiritual connection that happens face-to-face. When you're on a webinar, it's good. It's better than nothing, right? But better or best might be to organize a co-op and try to use these lesson plans, which we have provided, to be the teacher or to hire a teacher and to do it face-to-face if you can. But if you can't, we have the online class. So really though, I mean, we're trying to provide tools that are actually taking root in some communities. We've got a school up in Bountiful that's using our high school curriculum and our elementary school curriculum called Liberty Hills Academy. And they're using this curriculum, and they realize online webinars, there's just, the sound's not so good. You can't always see them eyeball to eyeball, you know, in this nice way, and you can't read body language, and, you know, sometimes the video doesn't work as well as other times, you know. And so anyway, they built this. JMCA in Texas as well is a little academy of about 40 students that have come together to become a 4-day-a-week academy. And then we've got several co-ops. In fact, you might find some. Sherry Black is a co-op leader in Texas or in Idaho that does this 1 or 2 days a week. Question?
Yeah, so would that kind of be, or would it be accredited co-op if you were to organize a co-op?
Yes, the biggest difference is because American Heritage School is we don't care who does the teaching. We do care who does the grading. So if you want credit, you have to have us grade your work. That's it. That's okay, right? Yeah, most parents say, great, you do it. Yeah, but you could get together.
So we're hiring our own teacher based on your guidelines that you're
Right. So we actually don't take roll of who comes to the webinar. We say, here's the webinar, it's 2 o'clock, come for this great family science discussion, or this great history discussion, or this, you know, math lab hour. But you have the calendar, you don't have to come. You can do all of this ahead of time. You know, you want to go to Disneyland for a week, well, get ahead and do it, right?
So we're still part of the webinar, the co-ops are still part of the webinar, they still have access to
Yeah, those webinars are actually, so here's what I would say about this. Let me show you. Again, the family school is, for anyone who's used it, it's really, we've tried to write it so that it's so useful that you can pick it up and teach it yourself. We're trying to give you a tool, okay? So let's go to high school year 3. I don't know, let's even go to electives here. I've got to log in. 1 second.
High school year 2 is their first year of
Sorry. Okay.
what they thought was the tool stuff.
So we could go, you know, let's say it's science. I don't know, high school year 3 science. By the way, this is really cool. We've just changed this and added this so you can mark your status. Have you done the lesson or not? You can check it off now. Let's say physiology of organelles. So this is a little bit more advanced than what you're going to see in the elementary lesson because it's written for a high school student. But it's written in the first person. Your child can read this or you can teach it to them. You know, you can see that it says, here's some of the websites again. They've got their flashcards right there. They're going to learn about, they've got an egg membrane demo with a link probably to a YouTube video, right? Our bodies are living organisms. The organs inside our bodies help us eat, get rid of waste, breathe, etc. When we eat, get rid of waste, and breathe, our bodies require several organs inside of them to accomplish those tasks. This is true of a cell as well, right? And you go on and you'll see that we even have images here, and they're, you know, it's talking about water-soluble molecules going across protein channels and fat-soluble molecules, and it's a little bit more complicated. This is a high school level biology text, right, that your child can read on their own. And you can teach them this as well if you want to. It will probably take you, you know, 20 or 30 minutes to prepare the lesson, or you hire a teacher, or your co-op divides and conquers, right? And then at the end of this, there's a lesson. So you'll notice also in the high school lessons, sometimes in the elementary, we typically have 1 or 2 academic concepts and 1 gospel principle. In the high school, we often will have 2 or sometimes 3 or 4 academic concepts and 1 gospel principle or 2 gospel principles, like you'll see here, that are part of the lesson. And then they have an assignment, and the assignment here is under lesson supplements. They've got all the links. There's the assignment. They can submit it. There's a little link here to say you can submit it right here into the learning management system. They log in to Canvas, or next year will be right across. Submit it there, get their feedback. But you don't even have to go to the webinars. We really are going to start calling those webinars optional enrichment colloquia or something like that. So, I'm serious. It's optional and it's enrichment. It's for you to do reasoning and relating with someone else.
You're doing so much more on the curriculum because it used to not be that extensive, and that is a good thing for
Yeah.
the
Can they
parents.
just add that to the high school?
Yeah, so year 3, I can tell you the history if you want. In brief, year 2 of the high school, we had a lot of the authors who were also the teachers, and we learned that was a bad idea. Because authors who are writing for a teacher have to write everything down. And so we said, we're going to separate and divorce these two roles. You're going to now be the author only. You have to write so that any mother out there who wants to be a co-op teacher and teach this lesson has all the resources right at her fingertips. Last year, you were so smart that you wrote down some of it, but because you had the rest of it right here and you were going to teach a webinar anyway, not all of it got on the table, right, or on the lesson. It's still there. It's a little bit more skeletal. It's kind of read this link, watch this link, read this. It's much better now, and we'll go around and so year 3, year 4, year 5, they'll all be that way. You want to just, we can look at another one here
And you're
too.
going to redo too.
We'll redo 2. That's right, when we get around to it.
I was just going to say, would you show a little webinar? I think that was really impactful.
Sure. You want to? We could even log in if we wanted to the other class. Right now we've got a webinar going. There are 40 families online, and let's just see. Should I do it? One second. So they'd come onto a webinar. Let's try this. Go to yeah.
Do you have these recorded so that we could maybe take your classes in the summer and submit in the summer? Does it have to?
Yes.
Are you working towards that,
Yeah.
or you can actually start the class in March, or
Yeah.
what do you?
So YouTube, yeah, we do. So I'll show you a webinar, and I'll show you that, for example, we have American history, latter-day learning. Let's just see what comes up here. Here's Mr. Gentile. He's actually teaching this class right now. This is 49, a playlist of 49 videos, all organized, into just, you could watch the videos for free if you want, but they're all online as well. And you can hear, actually it's not linked.
Many others who are joining us. So just try to imagine, we have this nice group here, but there really are like-minded students.
Let me see if I can plug it in. Yeah, so that's right. So this is why, again, we can't teach every single class a webinar every single year, at least not yet. It's not financially feasible for us, but it is, sorry for all the static on this. We have all the recordings. Anyway, he has amazing discussions, right? Really, really amazing discussions in this history class. But he's not the only one. You can find all of our courses have been put into playlists, and then they're linked back to the lesson as well. So, again, it's a resource. It's enrichment. It's nice to hear other kids discuss. But if you wanted to do it locally or even just by independent study, you could. It doesn't affect accreditation. Someone asked about how does that affect accreditation. The big thing that accreditors, BYU Independent Study now is just they're adding instructor-led courses because they found that they have higher satisfaction and higher completion rates, but not because it's required by some accrediting agency, right? NCAA, there was a little brouhaha in the news, maybe you remember that, about 5 years ago with NCAA threatening to take away accreditation from BYU Independent Study because, just various issues, which I won't go into in this class, but essentially, they trust the schools to verify. And for example, in math, we have a proctored exam. We don't let them take it at home. They have to take it with an adult who's over 18, who's not related to them, and is willing to sit down and proctor them once a term with a term math final. In these other courses, what you'll find is there are enough writing assignments that the writing assignments, we can tell. We can tell if the child's plagiarizing because most of the assignments come in And then if they turn in something that's pristine that sounds like a college professor, we say, let's Google search that phrase. Oh, yeah, they didn't cite their source. And we teach them, better cite your source. In college, you know, if you do this, you will lose more points. And in the real world, if you plagiarize, you know, people don't trust you. And it can be really detrimental to your career. You can lose a job over it, this kind of thing. We don't come out that way first time, right? We teach them gently. But it is amazing how much you can learn from those webinars if they participate, but even more importantly, even their writing. I mean, it's just really great what we read from the students and how we help them improve. There was a question about writing and math. We do offer math now. We don't offer math in the elementary school yet, but Mr. Connect has been doing some surveys, so you may have participated in those surveys. We're going to publish next week a list of the most highly recommended math programs among thousands of Latter-day Learning homeschoolers across the globe. So you'll at least have a popularity vote for the best math programs. And the same thing with language arts, and we are adding a language arts program, at least for teaching your child to read using the Book of Mormon, which is a class we're featuring today with Jan Hyde Harrison this afternoon in one of the breakout sessions. And we'll be adding more language arts. Actually, language arts, it's a funny thing because we don't have grammar and spelling explicitly taught currently, but we have lots of writing and lots of discussion, which are also some of the language arts, right? Speaking and writing, reading, that's all there. What we don't have right now is parts of speech and punctuation and, you know, spelling rules in K through 3. But we're going to add that soon. So there are also electives, right? I showed you a calendar, and the calendar says, you know, these are our 6 core classes, but we do have high school electives, and we're adding more and more all the time. Defending Religious Freedom Today, Educational and Computer Technology, Family Science, Financial Literacy, American History, Lessons from the Journals of Joseph Smith, World History, Written Portfolio. This is a written class. It's got great instruction for high schoolers from sentence and paragraph level to compare and contrast, cause and effect, you know, slicing the pie kind of categorization and division essays. This is all in the high school curriculum. So words and sentences, paragraphs, right? Classification essays. This is like 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, or 3 Types of Parents, helicopters, drill sergeants, and consultants, right? These kinds of essays. The Précis. Anyway, so you also, in your membership, right, you can either do a membership for just K-8 or a membership for 7-12, or for a small fee more, you could have both of them together. I think it's $10 more per month. But, okay, question? Angela, I got about 3 minutes or 2 minutes.
Really quick plug for the math, because it's Saxon Math.
Oh yeah, Saxon Math.
I love the webinars, and it's just been huge. I love
Good.
the math.
Yeah, and we recommend you get the Dive discs. Dive is digital interactive video education for math. They cost about $50 for the school year, but you can replay them. They're about 10 to 15 minute little lessons that go through every single lesson of a math book, and so you can put them on your computer and play them and replay them, and you can learn by the side of your child. We have a tutor in a math lab that helps, and then we do credit by exam at the end of each term for our school, but those digital videos are really great for Saxon. Yes?
So, as far as the Saxon Math goes, Joe, because I'm very anti-Common Core, and I heard that Saxon Math, at least from like 90-something on, is Common Core aligned. Are yours?
It's not 90. We used the 2002, 2003, 2004 editions, 2nd and 3rd editions, which are actually out of print now, and so you'll have to find them through a used bookseller or online. But they're definitely not Common Core. Common Core has rebranded all of their middle and high school math, Secondary Math 1, Secondary Math 2, and they've kind of scrambled what you and I used to know as pre-algebra, Algebra 1, Algebra 2, geometry, trigonometry. You know, they're kind of mixing it up, yeah,
Well,
with more of an exploration.
The curriculum of Saxon is not Common Core. It's only the Saxon that they're doing for the schools.
That's right. So
the
they're,
schools that purchase Saxon, that's Common Core aligned.
yeah.
But the homeschool that you're able to get.
That's right. Saxon has a nice line of products. In the homeschool, they haven't rewritten because they know homeschoolers don't want Common Core. That's a market for them. But they also have enough schools in Texas and California and big weight states like that they have lure, you know, to I mean, it's kind of like this. I mean, they do rearrange the sequence, but I mean, is this 6 inches or is this, you know, 10 centimeters tall? Yeah, I don't know. The answer is both. The Common Core certainly has some real issues. Right, but in some ways they're just relabeling things. They didn't rewrite all of those books. They just kind of rearranged them a little bit.
I don't
Yes.
know if people are interested in going outside the home, but I've got my kids doing some mathnasium.
Yeah.
And,
Oh, yeah.
And I have never, I love Saxon, but the mathnasium program for teaching children math is absolutely phenomenal.
Yeah, and here's another illustration that homeschoolers can be so, and I think every home is a homeschool if we wake up to it and become a better teacher in our home, which is our theme today. Mathnasium is a wonderful resource. Use them. Sylvan or your local tutor, or find one on Craigslist, or I don't know, find something that helps your child learn the math and get enough structure that they're not floundering. I planted tomatoes. Last year I had one tomato plant that I didn't put a cage around, and it got too big to put a cage around. The other two plants I had cages around them. The tomato that didn't have the cage still produced fruit, but it was lying on the ground, and so a lot of the tomatoes went bad because they were in the dirt and the sand. They rotted from the bottom up. And I just thought how interesting it is, how nice it is that a metaphor to have structure in your life, enough structure to hold you up, to kind of move you forward. You certainly grow without structure, but there's a fine balance of structure to help you get the exposure you need, right? Not just to sun and air and light, but to the right math tutors, to a constant schedule. Okay, my time's up. Thank you for your attention.